Welcome to the Virtual Strategic Solutions Virtual Reality Simulation System. Accessing Legacy Dataset. Files loaded. Simulation ready. Sorrel Booker is the president of the Govermint in the Fallout TV series. Sorrel Booker is an old associate of the Ghoul. By 2296, he became the self-proclaimed president of the Govermint, with several sheriffs as his subordinates, and with such businesses as the organ harvesters at the Super Duper Mart under his protection. While eating a meal at his table in the BBQ shack, serving as the Govermint building, Sorrel noted his surprise that the ghoul he heard about that wrecked the Super Duper Mart was the legendary ghoul himself. Sorrel went on to detail a bit of the ghoul's history as a famous bounty hunter to the sheriffs Troy and Rex. The ghoul then politely asks Sorrel for a needle and a thread, claiming there's one in his bag. Looking at Troy, Sorrel signals him to fetch it from his bag, and he does by placing the items on the table. The cloth that the needle and thread were wrapped under unraveled on the table, which Sorrel scoffed at its sight. The ghoul then holds up his rope-bound hands and asks if he'd be so kind as to have them untied. This request makes Sorrel pause with a cold look on his face, which the ghoul coaxes him, stating they're old friends. After a brief silent pause between them, Sorrel uses his knife to sever the ropes restraining the ghoul. Sorrel then comments that after 200 years he doesn't know what keeps him going, and then takes a drag off of his cigarette. He goes on to guess if the ghoul simply enjoys the good old California sunshine on his wrinkly ass face. His next comment, noting that the ghoul was still after her, upsets the ghoul as he sews his finger back onto his hand. The ghoul then snidely remarks that Sorrel can cross off one good reason for being off his list. He states that it's not to have unintelligent conversations with the likes of him, who had continued to his meal. Said remark made Troy whack the ghoul in the head with the butt of his gun and reprimand him to respect the president of the Govermint. Regaining his composure, the ghoul quizzically asks if Sorrel is a president now, to which Sorrel answers he doesn't see why not. It was the ghoul's suggestion that Sorrel hire a publicist to advertise the fact, as it was the first he heard of it. He'd go on to mention that there's a woman named Moldaver. Hearing the name causes Sorrel to spit out what he was eating and state that she goes by the name of Flame Mother, further stating how that bitch is dangerous. On the other hand, the ghoul comments that being dangerous is a prerequisite for being a good leader in modern times. Sorrel then claims that someone needs to step up and bring order to those parts, and continues asking if the ghoul knew why the boys brought him in. As the ghoul sews his finger back on, he answers that it's because he ruined an organ trade business, and Sorrel confirms it. They then agree that they've always liked the other, but Sorrel couldn't overlook the ruination of the Super Duper Mart, which was under the Govermint's protection. Hence, if the ghoul were released scot-free, then the people would lose faith in his protective services. Sorrel then asks the ghoul what would happen, to which he answers anarchy in the streets, and Sorrel confirms it. Sorrel asks if the ghoul has anything to say in his defense, who had finished sewing his finger back on, and answers, guilty as charged. The answer perplexed Sorrel about the blatant confession from the ghoul, and he confirms it, then segueing into how he shot up Philly and killed 9 to 10 people there. Troy then remarks that his daddy leaves in Philly, prompting Sorrel to warn him not to get caught up in what the ghoul was saying, who had just disparaged his father as a possible coward. However, the ghoul claims he's not trying to start anything, but discern whether or not Troy was a plausible coward like his father. Before Troy can shoot his gun rifle at the ghoul, Sorrel orders Rex to disarm Troy of his weapon, which the ghoul remarks was a very presidential thing for him to do. Sorrel then orders the 2 sheriffs to take the ghoul out back and feed him to the hogs. However, as they do, the ghoul kills the 2 of them all, while Sorrel watches and curses what he has witnessed. After that, the ghoul noted he had one question for Sorrel. From there, he pulled a wanted poster of Moldaver from his wall and asked why he had her picture on his wall. Sorrel answered Ghoul's question and asked why she was Moldaver. Astonished to hear Sorrel's answer, the ghoul claimed that it was not how he remembered her. Sorrel followed up, asking the ghoul how he remembered her, earning him a cold glare from him. Sorrel is shown to be a very talkative and gluttonous man. As an old associate of the ghoul, he appears to have some respect and trust for the ghoul, given his reputation as a bounty hunter. He is also level-headed enough not to be provoked by the ghoul's remarks, which are meant to throw opponents off their guard. However, he is also ruthless enough to kill anyone who threatens his position of power, old friend or not. Despite this, he seems only moderately upset when the ghoul shoots his two sheriffs, and appears completely unafraid, and continued in calm conversation, suggesting that he was willing to let the ghoul go at that cost, since it would maintain his reputation. As he states, if he lets someone go after knocking over an operation under his protection, his authority would be undermined. So the ghoul escaping at the cost of two of his subordinates' lives would allow him to save face.